You're listening to the NVUS Alien Podcast with your host, Heather Woodward, an award-winning psychic, supernatural author, and lover of all things true crime. On this show, we're going to deep dive into topics that don't usually see the light of day. The spooky, the weird, the macabre, the paranormal, and of course, aliens. Sit back, grab a cup of tea, and let's get on with the show.
Today's episode is going to be about the 11 scientists that have disappeared in mysterious ways. This is going to be broken up in 3 parts. There's a lot to go through. I'm basically going to be going through each person, what they're known for, all their accolades, what people have said about them, any kind of information that I can get about them. I did a super deep dive. This took me about 3 months to do. I started in April. We are now in July. This all started because Dave Wilcock died. And I'm going to be doing a separate episode of David Wilcock because there's just too much information about that. And I started this episode originally with David Wilcock, but as I was going through all the David Wilcock information, I'm like, this deserves a whole other episode. So we're going to go through the 11 scientists. And then in the third episode, I talk about what I think is happening and my hypothesis for the whole thing, because when I started this, I didn't really know anything. I didn't really know anything about it. I didn't really know what the crossover was with all of the scientists. And then when I got to the end, I was like, this is way bigger than what I thought it was going to be. This is something bigger. It's something more revolutionary. So anyway, with that, let's go on to the first person. We're going to start with Michael David Hicks. He was born in 1964, February 7th. So he was 59 years of age when he died in 2023. It was July 30th. He worked at JPL as a NASA postdoc. And also he was a research scientist until 2022. He was born in Dayton, Ohio. He earned a degree from Boston University and a PhD in lunar and planetary sciences at the University of Arizona. Okay, so the University of Arizona. I know a little bit about that because I used to live in Tucson. And for those of you who don't know, the University of Arizona is in Tucson. There are some interesting things about the University of Arizona. First of all, they are very much into mediumship. The Windbridge Institute is also in Tucson, and they work hand in hand. John Edward, he was tested at the University of Arizona. They used to have a very strong ESP Psi department. I don't know if they do anymore, but there was a huge amount of testing done for mediumship at that school. A lot of funding there. The noetic science people used to hang out there too. And they did a lot of research in their lab. The other interesting thing about Tucson is that there's lots of missile silos. There is a graveyard for planes. There are talking points among the locals about how there is an underground city that the government uses. There is an Air Force base just 5 miles outside of Tucson. The University of Arizona is known for its space program and its planetary program. There is a planetarium. I want to make a South Park joke so bad right here. But there is a planetarium at the university, and it is very well known for its telescopes. There is a sky pollution mandate in Tucson. There's not a lot of streetlights. It is one of the darkest places I have ever lived outside of the backwoods of Arkansas. They have the mandate because of the telescopes, because people are looking at the sky all the time. Just outside of city limits, they need to be able to see the stars. Also, fun note, the Vatican has their own telescope in the Tucson desert. It's on Mount Graham. So that's where Michael David Hicks got his PhD in lunar and planetary sciences, so I'm sure he probably used the Vatican's telescope. Michael David Hicks, he was researching the physical properties of comets and asteroids. He served on the science team of the DART project, the New Earth Asteroid Tracking Project, the Dawn mission, and the NASA Deep Space One mission. And then it also says that he was the author of over 80 peer-reviewed scientific papers. Some fun things about him. He loved to play the ukulele, and he did performances at Mount Palomar. He liked Wallace and Gromit, which I think is so adorable. And he loved the writings of Hunter S. Thompson. I'm sure you're going to ask me, what did he die of? I've looked at a lot of articles here, but it's not public information. So we don't know how he died, but that's all we really know about him. I will put all my links in the show notes so you can look it up yourself, but I've scoured the internet to find out what his death was or cause of death. And even this article from MSN, which is also, it's funny because the MSN article is just basically copied and pasted a few other places. I hate when people do that, but it says no cause of death has been publicly confirmed. This is from Science Direct. And here are some of the papers that he has written. Observations and modeling of the opposition surges of the icy moons of Saturn based on Cassini visual infrared mapping spectrometer data. Say that 10 times. Fast. Neptune's moon Triton, continuing surface seasonal volatile transport. Pluto in glory, discovery of its huge opposition surge. Pluto's haze, abundance, and size distribution from limb scatter observations by MVIC. Shape model and spin state analysis of PHA contact binary 85990 1999 JV6 from combined radar and optical observations. So it looks like he's writing these with other people under M.D. Hicks or Michael D. Hicks. It looks like current affiliation is from the Institute of Technology, Pasadena, United States. As I'm going through this, I'm wondering, why are his papers, because they're his papers, why are they under Caltech in Pasadena? I come to find out that Michael worked for JPL. That's NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory. And it was in Pasadena. And he did that as part of his postdoctorate research. But JPL is operated by Caltech under a contract with NASA. His papers would have been put under their school because there is a crossover. Now, he wasn't the only one that was writing them. He did have co-authors. According to the author information on Science Direct, he had 3,768 citations from 3,074 documents, 75 documents, 32 index, 2 preprints, and 446 co-authors. Now, I want to look up a little bit more about JPL. Jet Propulsion's laboratory, it is located in La Canada, Flint Ridge, California. It's right outside of Pasadena. It is now owned and operated and sponsored by NASA, but it's administered and managed by Caltech. The primary function of the laboratory is the construction and operation of planetary robotic spacecraft. It also responsible for operating the NASA Deep Space Network. Some of the projects that JPL was part of was the 2020 mission of the Perseverance rover, the Mars Science Laboratory mission, the Curiosity rover, the Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter, the Juno spacecraft orbiting Jupiter, the SMAP satellite for Earth, surface soil moisture monitoring, the New Star X-ray telescope, and the Psyche asteroid orbiter. It is also responsible for managing the JPL small body database, and that looks like it is a list of publications for all known small solar system bodies. I knew JPL sounded familiar. Guess who also went to Caltech? Jack Parsons. Jack Parsons, if you don't know, was a rocket engineer who did experiments. He did them with other people, including Apollo, Milton, Olin Smith, Frank Molina, Ed Foreman, as well as others. They called them the Suicide Squad because they did all kinds of crazy experiments. But Jack Parsons is known for the Babylon workings. And the Babylon workings were a Crowley-inspired magical working that was put together to bring in the Antichrist, who Jack Parsons thought was a redheaded woman. There's more to it. I got really into the Babylon working. Yeah, it is crazy. Not in woo out there, but crazy as in holy crap. It's a huge undertaking. It's a big magical working. Why do I say it's Crowley inspired? Because Aleister Crowley and Jack Parsons were friends. And then if we want to really go a little more nutty, Jack Parsons was also friends with L. Ron Hubbard. Parsons had a large influence over JPL. He did a lot of the first experiments with the JATO rockets. Looks like in 1944 he was expelled because of those crazy experiments that he did with the Suicide Squad. And then also they found out about his occult leanings and they used that against him. But I guess JPL, they also deployed weapon systems, the MGM-5 Corporal and the MGM-29 Sergeant tactical ballistic missiles, marking the first U.S. ballistic missile development. They also put together some weapon system prototypes, the Loki anti-craft missile system, and the Aerobee sounding rocket. And they tested it at White Sands, Edwards Air Force Base, and in Goldstone, California. JPL is hugely connected to our weapon systems, and I'm sure that had something to do with the bomb. And just as a side note, Parsons ended up dying at 37 because of an explosion in his house. I laughed because he was a loose cannon. And the other thing that JPL started doing is space travel. They did a lot of stuff with space. According to Wikipedia, they had their hands in the Voyager spacecraft. They looked at the Saturn's moon and Titan, Voyager 2, interstellar space, the Galileo mission, the Galileo spacecraft that went to Jupiter. They did all the Mars stuff, which I already talked about. And that's where they build the robots that go to space. It's funny because it says, where's the location of JPL? It's above the Devil's Gate Dam. Why that name? I don't know. But for the sake of this podcast, it is an unusual name. Devil's Gate has its own little bit of history. And wow, I'm always fascinated by where the government or NASA put their facilities, because there's always something around it that has some kind of paranormal or occultic or like high strangeness kind of environment. And Devil's Gate does not disappoint. So it is a flood control dam in Arroyo Seco, and it's in northern Pasadena. So we already knew that part. But Jack Parsons and Aleister Crowley believed that the site of the dam was a portal to hell. Fun times. The name was derived from a rock feature at the site, which looks like a devil. And I will go ahead and put pictures in the show notes so you can see what I'm talking about. But it is a very interesting rock formation. I don't know. To me, it looks like an alien. Anyway, it was built in the 1920s, and it was the Los Angeles County Flood Control District's first flood control dam in the LA area. Construction was contracted to the Bent Brothers Company. It had to be redone in 1932 because of a geological survey that went bad. And then, of course, JPL comes in 1936. And apparently the rocket testing sounds the roar of it, and the ground shook a lot in that area. And then it looks like in the 50s and the 60s, college students used the area for their fraternity initiations. Nothing could go wrong there. I guess they ate raw meat in the woods as an initiation. And then in the 1960s, they got caught and then stopped doing it, allegedly. I'm sure they probably just found somewhere else to do it. And then here's where it gets fun. So on March 23rd of 1957, an 8-year-old boy named Tommy Bowen disappeared while hiking the area. He was with a bunch of friends. He ran ahead of his friends around a corner, and then he disappeared. People believe that he was kidnapped. 2 months after his disappearance, his mom got a phone call saying that his partner was holding the kid, and that if she went down the street, he would be returned. But then nothing ever happened of it. She went and complied with the instructions, but then he was never dropped off. Oh, and then it gets better. 3 years later, on May 9th of 1960, 12-year-old Doug Hedrick disappeared just a few miles from the dam while making a trip to the grocery store. Then 22 days later, there was another kidnapping or attempt kidnapping of a 3-year-old boy named John Daly. Luckily, Daly's older brother saw it happening and got in the way, and so he wasn't taken. And then in 1970, after attempting to kidnap 3 girls, serial child murderer Mac Ray Edwards, he confessed to raping and murdering several missing children, but he didn't admit to kidnapping Tommy. But I guess the police always thought that he might have, and so they attributed it to him, even though they don't really have proof. But then Edwards committed suicide in his cell at San Quentin while waiting his death sentence. And then in the 1930s, Aleister Crowley believed that the Devil's Gates Dam was one of the 7 portals of hell. And then him and Jack Parsons and L. Ron Hubbard did rituals at the site. At first, he was only trying to invoke Pan, but then I guess he also performed experimental ritual evocations. That's very generic, but when you're at the portal of hell, what are you trying to summon? Probably also terrestrials. Yeah, this is just a really rude site. And also, Parsons did have a hand in JPL in the beginning, and so maybe it's not a coincidence that JPL ended up where it was. And then in 2016, an occultist named Travis McHenry started a horror film called The Cult of Cthulhu. I think I remember hearing about that, but I guess it's unfinished. So the dam has this really weird history. We're starting off strong. Hopefully. Not all of the people on this list have this craziness around them, but yeah. Let's go on to the next person. We're looking at Frank. His last name is Maiwald. Maiwald, maybe? I'm just going to call him Frank. It's easier. He was 61 when he passed away on July 4th, 2024 in Los Angeles, California. He was born on June 24th, 1964 in Ratingen, Germany. Looks like he went to the University of Cologne and he studied space and science research. He also worked at JPL, Jet Propulsion Laboratory, and he did something with the development of the SBG VSWIR instrument. It said that he had previously overseen the successful delivery of 2 instruments for the AMRC programs. His roles included technical supervisor, and he contributed to various projects such as the AMR SWAT, the COWVR, the AMR Jason 3, and Hi-Fi. I have no idea what any of that means, but it sounds pretty fancy. He wrote a lot of publications, he has a lot of accolades, and he won a bunch of awards. Go Frank. Apparently he was married for 25 years. Everybody loved him. Of course, everybody loves everybody after they die. But yeah, he was very well decorated, according to his obituary. It says here that the SBG VSWIR Free Flyer is a planned NASA satellite mission. It was planned for November 2031 in a sun-synchronous orbit at 623 kilometers altitude alongside a companion thermal infrared or TIR image to provide complementary data for the Earth System Observatory. It's a fancy thing that basically reads shortwaves, among other things. According to this other article, Frank's official title at JPL was spectroscopy engineer. It is the analysis of electromagnetic radiation emitted or absorbed by matter. And I'm going to read this verbatim because it seems important. It is a fundamental tool in both astronomical research and the scientific characterization of UAP, as the spectral signatures of objects can reveal information about their composition and propulsion mechanism. Apparently, he worked with UAP detection systems. Now let's look up this other one, the AMRC program. According to the Google machine, the Advanced Microwave Radiometer, or the AMRC, is a multispectral passive microwave radiator aboard the Sentinel-6 Jason CS satellite launched on November 21st, 2020. Its primary mission is to correct radar altimeter measurements for atmospheric water vapor effects, ensuring high precision sea surface height data. The AMRC measures the path delay caused by atmospheric water vapor along the radar altimeter's line of sight. Again, I don't know what any of that means, but it does sound really fancy. And I got the part where it says that it launched with a satellite, so it definitely has something to do with space and water. There are some tech specs. Frequencies are 8.7 gigahertz, 23.8 gigahertz, and 34 gigahertz. That's the baseline channels. Experimental high-frequency channels, 90, 130, and 168 gigahertz. Spatial resolution, there's a little squiggly line, 41.6 km at 18.7 gigahertz. A little squiggly line, 36.1 km at 23.8 gigahertz. And then another squiggly line, 22.9 km at 34 gigahertz. High resolution in experimental channels. Temporal coverage, global coverage every 10 days. Altitude, 1,336 kilometers. Inclination, 66.04 degrees. So if you're fancy and you're sciencey, then that makes sense to you. It does not make sense to me. I am a podcaster and a paranormal investigator. Science is not my forte. But anyway, it does sound very fancy. Sounds like he's got a lot of brain power, smarts. Great. Sounds like he's needed. Sounds like he had a really pivotal role. Oh, look right here. It says that his roles included technical group supervisor, so like he was head of the project. And then here's the projects that he did: the AMR, SWOTWVR, the AMR Jason 3, and the Hi-Fi. I don't know what any of those are, so let's look those up. These are like people that are really smart and really needed. I don't really like that they're being offed, allegedly. Or maybe it's just a really stressful job. I don't know. Okay, so this SWOT one has to do with oceanography and water and the ocean topography. So it looks like they're reading the ocean, which kind of makes sense because the other thing was about water too. Let's look up the COWVR one. This one has to do with ocean wind vector radiometer and temporal experiments for storms and tropical systems. Again, it's water-based. And then this AMR Jason 3. Let's see what that is. So Jason 3, this is a different website, so it's a different part of the NASA program, but this one has to do with oceanography again, to monitor global ocean circulation and climate change and sea levels. I did find a website. It does mention the SBG, VSWAR, AMRC, all the ones that I mentioned. But there is one here that I didn't know about, was the Juno MWR. And it says he was the receiver lead for the microwave radiometer currently orbiting Jupiter. And then these other things that I did talk about, yes, they do have to do with oceanography, but apparently oceanography in space because they have to do with satellites. So he was part of the space program. Hi-Fi, I found out what it is. It's the Herschel Space Observatory program. I did find Frank's papers. It says Doctor Applied Physics, JPL, Caltech, NASA. He has 76 publications, 12,040 reads, 2,583 citations. Here is a look at some of his publications. And there are other people here too. They're all co-written. But we have RF and electronics design of the compact ocean wind vector radiometer, COWVR. Completion of the AMRC instrument for Centennial 6. MWR, microwave radiometer for the Juno mission to Jupiter. Here's an interesting one. Demonstrating a low-cost, sustainable passive microwave sensor architecture, the compact ocean wind vector radiometer mission, a passive probe for subsurface oceans and liquid water in Jupiter's icy moons. He's doing this stuff for water on other planets. Now that is interesting. A discovery mission to determine the interior structure of gas and ice giants. The list goes on and on. This dude fully dedicated his life to this based on how many papers he wrote about this. So if you all know a little bit more about this man, somebody wrote in the guest book, he was a hardworking colleague with a smile on his face and a warm heart. That's nice. We had a wonderful time at Lake Arrowhead. This one says, Uncle Frank was a kind and warm-hearted person. I remember him coming every night to say goodnight and gently touching my head when I stayed with him and Auntie as a child. I was always proud of him, not just from his professional accomplishments, but also because he could fix and create anything he needed. When I visited him again as an adult, he offered me valuable advice about life and shared his wisdom. I wish I had spent more time with him. He will always have a special place in my heart. Somebody else wrote, when I heard of Frank's passing, I just stared out the window, focusing on Mount Wilson. I let out a big sigh, and I asked myself why. And it also says, it seems like he left in the middle of everything. So as I go through these, nobody's talking about how he died. Just that he was a super nice guy, that he was really professional, he was very friendly. Just going through the messages for this guy in particular, it just seems like his death came out of nowhere. Michael David Hicks, too. There's something about it. They're both within 2 years of each other. They're both very young, and there is no public cause of death. Next person on the list is Nuno Loureiro, I think. Loureiro. I'm going to call him Nuno just because I don't want to butcher his name. He was a professor and director of MIT's Plasma Science and Fusion Center. He died at 47, and it looks like he died from gunshot wounds. According to a letter from President Sally Kornbluth, she wrote, "I write to share the tragic news that Professor Nuno Loureiro, director of the Plasma Science and Fusion Center, or PSFC, died early this morning from gunshot wounds he sustained a few hours before. In the face of this shocking loss, our hearts go out to his wife and their family and to his many devoted students, friends, and colleagues." End quote. He was a theoretical physicist and fusion scientist, and he joined the MIT faculty in 2016. It looks like his research addressed complex problems lurking at the center of the fusion vacuum chambers and the edges of the universe. I think that's space. I'm going to assume that's what that is. I guess he was doing research on plasma behavior and the physics behind astronomical phenomena like solar flares. So his plasma stuff had a lot to do with energy, like clean energy or fusion power energy. Apparently, right before he died, he was working on quantum computing algorithms for plasma physics simulations. Nuno majored in physics at the Instituto Superior Técnico IST in Portugal, and he obtained a PhD in physics at the Imperial College London in 2005. He did his PhD at Princeton at the Plasma Physics Laboratory, and then he moved to the UKAEA Cullum Center for Fusion Energy. That was in 2007. And then he moved on to MIT. Apparently, he won a bunch of awards for his work in plasma. Let's see what other kinds of things he did. I want to know more about this gunshot situation. So far, everything that I have come across has been very nebulous. I kind of need some details here. So let's look up some stuff. All right, Nuno has his own Wikipedia. Nice. It looks like on December 15th of 2025, he was shot at his residence in Brookline, Massachusetts, and he died from injuries the following day. His murder was connected to Claudio Manuel Neves Valente, who also did a shooting at the Brown University 2 days prior. All right, let's look at this Brown University shooting mass spree. According to Wikipedia, on December 13th, 2025, this guy killed 2 students, and then he wounded 9 other students. I guess there was a lot of people there because it was examination week. So he ran away from there, and Brown University is in Rhode Island. So then he went from Rhode Island to Massachusetts, and then he killed Nuno. Then he went and allegedly killed himself, just because it says on December 18th, he was found dead. It says self-inflicted gunshot, so I assume that means suicide, like he killed himself. And he was in a storage unit in New Hampshire. He was found with 2 guns, and then I guess the suicide gun, they say, was the same gun that he used in the Brown University shooting, but not the one that shot Nuno. So that's interesting. So Valente actually went to Brown University. But it doesn't say why he killed Nuno. He actually went to his house, which is suspect to me. It says allegedly. I don't know why he would do that when he went to the school initially, Brown University. We have to look more into that. Okay, apparently they were 2 guns. So one of the guns matched the shooting at Brown University, and that's the one he killed himself with, self-inflicted gunshot wounds. The one that he killed Nuno with was a different gun. Nuno was married and had 3 daughters, and he liked to play football games with the locals. Just a little bit of trivia. I'm looking at this ABC News article, and I'll put all of my links in the show notes. I like to do this stuff in real time because the scripts are stupid. And also, we're going to find out together. I'm going to read it. Based on analysis of the information and evidence gathered throughout the investigation, the FBI assesses Valente's victims were symbolic in nature. The FBI said in a release, Brown University as a whole and Dr. Nuno represented to the shooter his personal failures and injustices he perceived were inflicted by others over time. By attacking them, Valente was likely able to overcome his shame and envy by using violence to punish those communities that he perceived contributed to his downfall. It looks like he had prepared this shooting for several years. He had a transient lifestyle. So he'd been thinking about it for a while, but again, it doesn't say why he specifically wanted Nuno. I'm reading another article from AP News. This one says that as of December 17th, 2025, they didn't have any kind of motive. And there were no suspects. In the AP News article, as of December 17th, they didn't have any connection to Valente. It seems like the narrative changed 2 days later. Because by the 19th, they had all the information that they needed. Let's make this a cohesive timeline because I know I'm all over the place. So December 13th, 2025 is when the Brown University spree killing happened. Then Nuno died on December 16th, 2025. It looks like he was shot on the 15th because he died in the hospital later on. Then it looks like Valente killed himself on the 16th. So he died the same day that Nuno died. The common thread here is the Instituto Superior Técnico, that's IST, in Lisbon. Apparently, Nuno went there and so did Valente. According to this article, he graduated in 2000 from that institute in Lisbon. Now, Valente, he was 48, so let's see when he went to that college. Valente went to that same institute between 1995 and 2000. Both were on top of their class, although Valente had higher marks. It says here that while Valente was at the Portugal school, he was a teaching assistant at some point, and he was terminated by the institution on February 29th, 2000. There was no reason cited. Nuno remained at the school and became a researcher and then a team leader at the institute. So they may have known each other, but they didn't graduate together. Basically, through people on Facebook, like this article is literally citing Facebook posts. It's a New York Post too. I'm trying to figure out what the narrative here is. They're trying to show this narrative of he was disgruntled because he went to the same school as Nuno, and Nuno excelled and he didn't, and like he was pretty much a narcissist and believed that he was better, and he stopped talking to his rich family. He kind of went ballistic. But we're talking about something in 2000 that happened, and then what, 25 years later, he goes and he kills everybody? I don't know. He may have seen Nina's work and been like, that should have been me kind of thing. I could totally see the disgruntled narrative. I totally get it. Like, that could be a thing, but again, to find his house is a little weird. In my mind, there's something off with this. And I'm like, okay, sure, yeah. Okay, let's go with the disgruntled narrative. That's fine. But there's just, again, we go to the university and we're like, we didn't like it there. We're going to kill everybody there. I get that part. And then we're like, no, we don't like Nuno. I should have been Nuno. I should have had the kids. I should have had the same thing he has. So I'm going to kill him too. I wish that it made more sense to me, but it doesn't. But then it's not supposed to make sense, maybe, because I'm trying to make sense of a killer that's going on a spree. We're on Scholar again. And we're looking at his peer-reviewed papers, because why not? He's got a page here. He says verified email at mit.edu, plasma physics. Let's look at some of these titles. Instability of current sheets and formation of plasmoid chains. Fast magnetic reconnection in the plasmoid-dominated regime. Efficient quantum algorithm for dissipative nonlinear differential equations. I wish I knew what that meant. Formation of plasmoid chains in magnetic reconnection. Magnetic reconnection and stochastic plasmoid chains in high Lundquist number plasmas. Whoa. He has so many papers. And they span from 2007 to 2000. Let's see. 2021. Citations 5,623, 2896 from 2021. 74 articles in total, and he has a whole bunch of co-authors just like everybody else. Couldn't find any obituary pages that I did for the other two. Looks like the MIT put out something, and I've already gone through that. And it just shows all of his accomplishments, and then it talks about his wife and his kids, his 3 daughters. That's about it. It says here in the Google machine that plasmoids are observed in astrophysical environments such as the solar wind, cometary tails, and the Earth magnetosphere. They play a role in energy transfer, particle acceleration, and magnetic field dynamics. In laboratory research, plasmoids are studied for fusion energy, plasma confinement, and high-energy physics experiments. Some reports also associate plasmoid-like phenomenon with unidentified aerial phenomenon, though these interpretations are more speculative. In essence, plasmoids are fundamental plasma magnetic entities that demonstrate organization, stability, and energy transfer. Their study bridges astrophysics, space physics, and laboratory plasma research, providing insights into both natural cosmic events and potential technological applications. I'm looking at an article from the Journal of Modern Physics, Volume 15, Number 11, October 2024. Not too long ago. This is, less than 2 years ago? It's called Unidentified Anomalous Phenomenon, Extraterrestrial Life, Plasmoids, Shapeshifters, Replicons, Thunderstorms, Lightning Hallucinations, Aircraft Disasters, and Ocean Sightings. Wow. Okay. The abstract says, as documented by the NASA Space Shuttle films and detailed in this report, self-illuminating pulsating plasma-like UAP UFO plasmoids have multiple shapes and sizes, are attracted to electromagnetic activity, and travel at different velocities from different directions, making 90 to 180 degree turns, as well as colliding, intersecting, and piercing other plasma. They have been filmed by the U.S. Navy personnel and U.S. Customs and Border Protection, DHC-8, flying above and diving, sinking beneath the ocean. As I'm reading below, it says thunder lightning storms are the main drivers of Earth's GEC and direct positive currents into the ionosphere, which attract plasmas. The troposphere also has a positive charge, and the ocean surface under white water and turbulent conditions develops a positive charge. And we hypothesize that this account, as reported here, shape-shifting UAP replicons that split into or generate additional shape-shifting UAPs as filmed by NASA and U.S. Customs. Plasmoids appear to purposefully interact and engage in complex behaviors, and is suspected that they are sentient and represent a fourth domain of life. Oh, wow. Although plasmas in the lower atmosphere may be responsible for UAP sightings over the centuries, including those that appear to battle, in air quotes, over cities or follow and harass military ships and planes, plasmoids cannot account for all UAPs, which may include extraterrestrial spacecraft from other worlds. It goes on, and the whole paper is here. So I'm going to just go ahead and put this in the show notes. There are lots of photos of UAPs and what they're talking about, and it's just, here, let me give you a breakdown of what we're talking about. So all of a sudden, Nuno's work becomes very interesting. Next person on our list is Jason Thomas. This is an interesting one because Jason was missing for 3 months. I'm looking at an article that was put out December 12th, 2025 by the Boston 10. On December 12th, 2025, Thomas went for a late night walk in the Wakefield, Massachusetts neighborhood where he lived. He had been struggling with the recent death of his parents, it said. There was a camera that caught him crossing the street near the railroad tracks by the Wakefield train station. He was an assistant director of chemical biology at Novartis. He'd been married for a decade. His wife is also a former scientist, and she's now an animal trainer and a behavior consultant. Okay, it looks like him and his wife, they went out with friends. His wife said that he was very quiet that night, was like atypical for him. But it was also the first time that they had gone socializing since the death of Thomas's parents. His mother passed away in hospice care, and then his father died of a heart attack while dealing with the details of the funeral. And apparently it was really traumatic because his father collapsed in the arms of Thomas. And it looks like it happened only an hour later. This was the first time that Thomas had a major death. So he didn't deal with it very well. He would do a lot of crying, which is totally relatable. Or he would go on walks, because I guess going in the forest made him feel better. So he would go on the walks with the dogs, or he would just walk around the neighborhood. So on the night that he disappeared, after they got home from their social event, everything's going to seem normal except for the fact that he was being really quiet. But given his mood during that time, she thought maybe he was just grieving. Anyway, dogs got treats. Everybody went upstairs. And then Thomas left. And his wife didn't realize that he had left. And then she heard the mailbox outside squeak. And she's, oh, he must be outside. So they saw each other, and then he walked away. It was like a husband and wife giving each other the look, like, I'm not going to be gone for too long. So she figured he was just going on one of his walks because it had been an interesting day. The wife says that she saw him on the Ring camera at 11:53 p.m. And then she called him a few times around 12:13 a.m., and then he never answered. And then she fell asleep, and around 1:30 she realized he hadn't come home yet, which was really weird for him because even when he went on walks, he usually came right home. She went into the bathroom and realized that his phone and his wallet were on the counter. So he didn't get any of the phone calls. He had basically emptied out his pockets and then went for a walk. So the reason why he went to the mailbox was that he put the Apple Watch in the mailbox. She got into the car and she went looking for him. And she went the usual route that he went. And then when he wasn't found, she called the police. She immediately knew something was wrong. I think the Apple Watch in the mailbox triggered something like, hey, he doesn't want to be found. On December 13th, the Wakefield police searched for Thomas in the early morning hours. They canvassed the area. They checked local business cameras. They were just checking everywhere. Then his wife officially filed a missing person report after they couldn't find him. They called a canine team and a drone team. They were really looking for him. And that's when they found the Ring camera that looked like he crossed the street near the train station and went towards a set of railroad tracks. So I guess Thomas was a writer. He had journals. And his wife went through the journals looking to see if he could find any clues as to what was going on. He was super depressed about his parents dying, which, yeah. And then he was feeling a lot of pressure at work. And then he was talking about maybe wanting to change careers because he was tired of what he was doing. I guess Thomas had said something to his wife about it, and then she was just thought he was being stressed or whatever and just let him talk it out, she said. But she felt like her relationship was safe, and they had 4 dogs. They're all big dogs, too. They weren't all little dogs, but they had 4 dogs. And she felt like he wouldn't leave the dogs either. They thought maybe he had taken a train somewhere, but they talked to the train people, and one of the conductors said that he didn't see anybody get on or off trains. I guess there were sightings of him all over the place because people were calling them in, but none of them panned out. There was nothing recovered. He was wearing hats, gloves, and a jacket, and none of those were ever found. And there was nothing in his bank accounts or nothing in his parents' estate, so he didn't take out any money. He was on the news. He was on social. They were like totally looking for him. But he did like to go to the lake. So they did look around the lake and nothing. They were going to start looking for him in the spring in the water, like maybe he had accidentally drowned or something like that or fallen into the water. They were going to dive in the lake in the spring because part of the lake was frozen over because it was a dead of winter. So they were just waiting for it to unfreeze, and then they could look just in case he had fallen over, he had gotten pushed into the lake or something. But then they found his body 3 months later. So this was March 18th, 2026, so not that long ago. A body was pulled from the Massachusetts lake. The lake is called Lake Quannapowitt. I know I butchered that. They pulled him out Tuesday, March 17th. So because the lake had frozen over, like I said, they couldn't do anything. And then finally, they dredged it for his body. All it says is no foul play was suspected in the connection of his death. So they think he committed suicide, essentially, is what I'm getting from this. Let's go to his obituary. Let's see what his obituary said. According to his obituary, he passed away unexpectedly after having been missing since December 12, 2025. Oh, they were married for more than 10 years. They were married for 24. I don't know why the other article said 10 years. They've been married for 24 years. They've been together a long time. He was born in Savannah, Georgia. He was the only child of 2 people. His father was military. I guess he was very well loved, which would make sense. And he was very close to his parents, and he was an only child, so it makes sense why their death would be so devastating to him. So he earned an undergraduate degree in both physics and biology from Temple University, and then he went on to receive his doctorate in biophysics from the University of Illinois Urbana-Champaign. And then he later completed a postdoctorate degree at Scripps Research Institute in La Jolla. That's in California. And they met in college. They started out in a long-distance relationship, and then they would meet together. Then they ended up getting married and living together. It says the true pinnacle of Jason's career was when he went to work for Novartis Institute of Biomedical Research. So he started in 2010. And he became the associate director of the chemical biology department. He loved hiking, being outdoors. He loved his dogs. He did a lot of hiking trails all the time. So that's why when he left, she didn't think anything of it, his wife, because he did it all the time. He liked to barbecue. He liked to mix drinks. We're going to do some research on the places that he went to college and look at if he wrote any papers or anything like that, or let's find out more about his career and see how this relates to everyone else. So I'm looking at Novartis. I don't know if I'm saying it correctly, so I'm sorry if I am butchering the pronunciation. It is what it is. Anyway, it's in Cambridge, Massachusetts. It is a biomedical research organization. According to the website, there's 2,300 scientists, clinicians, and business professionals. It's one of the largest corporate employers in the city. It opened its doors in 2003. Looks like there are other U.S. sites in Carlsbad, California, Indianapolis, Indiana, Morris Plains, New Jersey, Denton, Texas, Durham, North Carolina. There's 2 of them in Durham, North Carolina. Morrisville, North Carolina, Millburn, New Jersey, Winter Park, Florida, and San Diego, California. They all have different specialties. The one in Cambridge, it does biomedical research. He is not related to space, water, or anything having to do with free energy or anything like that. And when he was stressed at work, he wanted to change careers. That's something. And the fact that he was found in the water is a little sus, I'm not going to lie. It's kind of hard to drown yourself. It's not to say that you can't, but our bodies do fight it. We have natural responses to drowning. And it just seems weird that he would end up in the water of all places. But he was very depressed. People do weird things when they're depressed. So, I don't know. Now, at Novartis, or however you say it, they do clinical trials. They do oncology, cardiovascular, renal stuff. But I'm not seeing anything that's related to the other people on this list. There is a connection here that is a little interesting in the broader scheme of things, not in relation to UFOs or disclosure, but in relation to vaccines. So Novartis makes vaccines, coronavirus. So they do manufacture there, as does Pfizer. And if you've listened to my other podcasts, I do a whole thing on Pfizer COVID vaccine. There is a book called The Pfizer Papers that got panned when it came out because they're like, oh, there's nothing truthful about it, but it's very truthful, actually. I've looked up the paperwork. I actually went through that book and looked through the actual papers that Diamond Wolf talks about in the book, and it's credible if you actually do the fucking research and actually go through the papers and actually read through it and don't just criticize it. There is a narrative, and Stephen Bannon does the forward for it, but yeah, I don't like that part because he's a dickbag. That right there takes away some of its credibility. However, if you put that aside and actually read the papers and actually go off of the evidence and actually look at it, a lot of what Naomi Wolf says is absolutely fucking true. You just kind of have to get around the narrative. But there is something to that. Because this Novartis place does create vaccines. And they do create COVID vaccines. And I just looked up Pfizer, and Pfizer is down the street. They both are in Massachusetts. They're both in Cambridge. And they do a lot of collaborating together. If we're looking at biotech, and Thomas knew something, I could see where, this is all allegedly, but I could see how maybe using his parents' death as a way to get rid of him. It's there. Now I'm looking at this article from 10 hours ago, it says. So 5/4/2026. This is Germany. Biotech shut down COVID vaccine production entirely. It says this biotech that was global because of the pandemic, and it worked one of the first coronavirus vaccines, decided to restructure. They're no longer going to make the COVID vaccine, and they're going to leave the production to the Pfizer people. So they're going to stop production. The company will be closing in 2027, and it will be getting rid of 1860 jobs. Why are they moving away from COVID? It's because there's a market decline for it, and because now the vaccines are only administered to the elderly and to the high risk. It is interesting that Pfizer and Novartis partner a lot. I just looked it up. They do a lot of joint cardiovascular research, AI-driven operational improvements. That's interesting. And shared involvement in oncology drug development. So it says here that both companies are leveraging AI for operational efficiency. This is a whole other rabbit hole we're going down, because there's a lot of stuff about the vaccine that just doesn't sit right with me. And say what you want about it, but there's a lot of shenanigans that went on with the vaccine, and there is a lot of things that we were just lied to about. And Novartis is one of the top 6 vaccine companies in the world as of 2026. So, again, completely different rabbit hole, completely different conspiracy theory. I don't know. This is something completely different, and if he was involved in any of that, oh my goodness, just on a whim, I put in Novartis space travel. There's a lot here. The first article that I found is Novartis ready to head for deep space with Voyager. This is an article from March 6, 2023, and it says Novartis ready to head for deep space with Voyager after a year kicking the tires. It says it's been a year since Novartis ventured into orbit with Voyager Therapeutics to find new central nervous system targets. Now the big pharma is ready to go deeper into space with the Andin-associated virus capsid discovery biotech. It also said Pfizer's in on this too. There's another article here. Pharma goes to space. And it has to do with microgravity. And this is from November 18th of 2022. I'm quoting. Researchers from academic institutions and the pharmaceutical industry have been conducting biomedical research in the inhospitable environment of space, ironically to create therapies that can improve health back on Earth. Even drugs for COVID-19 have taken a spin in orbit. In the late 2020 and early 2022, the company Inno Studio flew its experiments to the International Space Station to see whether microgravity could help improve the stability of Gilead Sciences' antiviral remdesivir I don't know how to say that, REMDESIVIR, to increase the efficiency and reduce the risk profile of drug formulation. These drugs usually have integrate structures and involve processing steps. A low-gravity environment has several advantages that can accelerate the discovery and preclinical testing of these complex molecules. I wish I was more scientific, and I am not, so I'm going through this stuff and trying to figure out what it means. But according to some articles that I read, Voyager is a therapeutic company. Voyager Therapeutics is called, and they do gene therapy for neurological diseases. And so that's who the Voyager was in the last article. And mostly they're involved in biomedical research in space. It looks like they participated in a rodent research mission on the space station, and it had to do with the study of the molecular basis of skeletal muscle atrophy in microgravity. And they use mice as the model for the organism to explore how spaceflight affects muscle and bone health. So the ISS provide a unique microgravity environment that can accelerate the study of disease mechanisms and test potential treatments. Novartis work there aligns with its broader mission to develop therapies for conditions such as muscle atrophy, which can be relevant to astronauts and also to patients on Earth. We're going to go on to the next one. The next person on our list is Carl Grillmayer. Grillmair. There's a lot of documentation on this one. He actually has a Wikipedia page, so that helps a lot. Let's look at it and see what it says. He was born in 1959. He was Canadian. He was an astronomer and an astrophysicist. He was a research scientist at Caltech. He began in 1997. He studied exoplanets, galactic structure, and dark matter. Holy shit. He collaborated on the NASA telescope missions, including the Hubble Space Telescope, the Spitzer Space Telescope, and Wide Field Infrared Survey Explorer. Oh, and here's another interesting thing. He discovered water on multiple exoplanets, so there's another water connection. He died on February 16th, 2026. He was shot outside of his home in Llano, California, which is in the Antelope Valley. Interesting. That's the second scientist so far that was shot out in front of his home. Almost seems like it was intentional. According to Wikipedia, he was born in Calgary in 1959. He's got 2 younger siblings. One of his siblings died in 1981. His father, Leo, was a rock climber. I guess he was very big in the rock climbing community. It looks like he introduced technical rock climbing to Canada. He earned a Bachelor of Science with honors in astrophysics from the University of Calgary in 1983. He attended the college through the M. Cecil Brownlee Scholarship. He was awarded the Province of Alberta's Award and the BP Canada Award. And then he also graduated with honors with a top student in physics prize. Then he went on to earn a Master of Science in Astronomy from the University of Victoria in 1986. He went to school on a Petrie Fellowship. And then he attended the University of Toronto in 1987 to get his doctorate. And then he was awarded the Natural Sciences and Engineer Research Council of Canada PhD scholarship. And then he moved to the Australian National University in 1988. And it says, and I'm going to quote this, there he studied the dynamics of globular clusters of stars and earned a doctorate in 1993. This guy is so smart, but like when he was alive. He had a lot of stuff going on with him. So this guy worked everywhere. Okay, so he worked as a data analyst at the Space Telescope Science Institute in Baltimore, Maryland. And then he worked on the International Ultraviolet Explorer at NASA's Goddard Space Flight Center. He worked on the Wide Field and Planetary Camera, analyzing data from the Hubble telescope. And then he also tested and calibrated the Wide Field and Planetary Camera too. He was a co-investigator on the Nuker calibration, which used Hubble data to study local galactic cores. And then he worked with John Traeger in 1998. He investigated exoplanet imaging techniques for future use in telescopes. This guy is everywhere. He was a co-investigator on the Virtual Planet Laboratory with Victoria Meadows. He led an exoplanet search team at California Transit Authority from 2005 to 2007. He was a member of the NASA Astrobiology Institute from 2009 to 2012. But he joined Caltech in 1997, and he was part of the Spitzer Science Center, and he worked on the Spitzer Space Telescope. And then during that time, he helped propose and develop instruments for exoplanet spectroscopy that would later be implemented on the Fast Infrared Exoplanet Spectroscopy Survey Explorer. Finesse is how they put it in parentheses. That's probably easier to say. On Monday, February 16th of 2026, he was shot in this front porch. He was pronounced dead at the scene. He died from a single bullet wound to the torso. So whoever killed him knew what they were doing. Looks like the suspect was 29-year-old Freddie Snyder, and he was caught on February 18th, 2026. It looks like Snyder lived 2 miles from Gilmar, and he liked to trespass on his property, and Gilmar had actually reported it to the police, looks like in December of 2025, and then Snyder was arrested on weapons charges, but then he was released 3 days later. It's interesting because even on his Wikipedia page, it says that his killing was very close to Nuno's killing, who we talked about before, and that people were saying that it was very similar and that it was part of a conspiracy theory, the one that I'm talking about right now. It says the White House opened an investigation on the killings and disappearances, but I don't know. It seems to me Trump is more interested in just wreaking havoc in Washington, D.C. with this new thing about the reflection pool, whatever, and he really wants his ballroom, and he's just putting statues everywhere. Dude is sundowning like crazy. But anyway, so we'll see if anything even comes out of this. Gilmar's widow said that it isn't a conspiracy theory, that she believes her husband was targeted in a revenge plot because Snyder, he had trespassed on their property, claiming to be hunting a coyote. That's weird. But she believes that Snyder blamed her husband for the fact that he got arrested and wanted to get back at him because I guess he had returned with a baseball bat 2 weeks before the shooting, but then didn't do anything and then came back on the 16th and finished the deal. But yeah. Who's to say, and this is just me tinfoil hatting here, but who's to say that Snyder wasn't goaded into believing the things that he believed? You know what I mean? Mind control is a thing. I watched enough X-Files to know that. Alright, so that's the Wikipedia page. Let's see what else we can find on the internet as we're going through this. He was 67 years old. That's good to know. So according to his Caltech obit, it says that he spent nearly 30 years at Caltech. He contributed to major NASA missions and lots of programs that had to deal with exoplanets, galactic structure, and the remnants of ancient collisions between the Milky Way and smaller galaxies. This is a direct quote. He discovered dozens of stellar streams, structures formed by those long ago interactions, and was lead author on a landmark 2007 study that captured enough light from exoplanets to identify molecules in their atmosphere for the first time. This is from The Guardian. Sergio Fajardo Acosta was a colleague of Grillmar's, and he said that he made important contributions to the understanding of Earth's galaxy, the Milky Way, and advancing knowledge of its collisions and mergers with other galaxies in its long ago past. That's a direct quote. It's very similar to what was said in the obit. But here's something interesting. It says, and this is a quote, he considered Grillmar's most remarkable achievement to be detecting indications of water on a distant planet orbiting around a star different from the sun. Water, of course, is a telltale sign of life, or at least conditions that are favorable to life, and finding signs of life on another planet has been, air quotes, a quest for all of humanity, end air quotes, throughout history, Fajardo Acosta said. Here's some honors and awards. Exceptional Scientist Achievement Medal from NASA, Maclean's Magazine Honor Roll, 2006, 39 Canadians who make the world a better place to live. Awarded 1488 hours orbits of Hubble and Spitzer Space Telescope time as co-investigator. It looks like, man, this guy knew space in and out. If there were going to be aliens, this dude was gonna know about it. This bro was just given grants. Here are some of the grants that he got. In 2012, NASA Astrophysics Data Analysis Proposal, the WISE Variable Source Database, and Learn Tracers of Milky Way tidal streams. Say that 10 times fast. 2011 NASA Astrophysics Data Analysis Proposal, Stellar Debris Streams Probing the Galactic Dark Matter Distribution with WISE and 2MASS. There's so many here, but I'm just picking and choosing here. 1998 HST Proposal, the Early Evolution of Local Group Dwarf Irregular Galaxies. And then he has a ton of service community. A lot of it have to do with war mission exoplanets, National Science Foundation panels, fellowship reviews, director of the Llano Community Association, served on the National Science Foundation panel, Galaxy Structure. This is the dude, man. So far, he has the most experience out of everyone that we've looked at. It's just ridiculous. He's got invited seminars. These are all the talks that he's talked on. Nearby Halo streams. Invited review given at Lessons from the Local Group, a conference celebrating the birthdays of Bruce Elmer Green and David Block in the Seckless Islands, May 20th to 25th, 2014. He did a talk on galactic structure and near-field cosmology with tidal streams. There's a lot of that kind of stuff. Stellar streams in local group, galactic structures with SIM, colloquialism given at the Institute for Astronomy, photographic searches for extended tidal streams. There's a lot of stuff about tidal streams in this public outreach. He's got a ton. Oh, here we go. Interests and passions. Cycling, hiking, skiing, flying, music, environment, like clean energy. That wouldn't get you killed or anything. Water conservation. I think what's most interesting about this one, there's two things really. The first is that his wife is like, nope, no conspiracy here, move out of the way, kind of thing. She truly believes that it's just like an act of aggression that went bad. But that goes into the other thing, which is like one bullet. Are you kidding me right now? One bullet, that's all it took. There are 6 more, but this is getting to be very long. So we're going to stop here, and then we're going to do a part 2. And then we're going to go into the next 6 people. There's so much that has to do with new technology, with the skies, with water. The water thing is throwing me off a little bit, but finding water on other planets. And then the study of water, and then this whole idea of vaccinations going to space. This is all stuff that is moving science forward, but also could be moving the idea of how we got here, or it's changing the narrative of our evolution, but it's also bringing in aliens, which, if you think about it, really threatens Christianity as a whole. And I don't want to talk too much about that now because that's really a Nick Pope thing. So I'm going to leave that alone for a minute and we'll get back to it. But I don't know. So far, what I found is that this is really sus, y'all. Anyway, I'm going to leave it there. See you on the flip side.
Thank you for listening to the NVUS Alien Podcast. For show notes, go to the website www.nvusalien.com. All of the reference materials and mentions in this episode are linked there. If you want more witchy, paranormal, and fringe content, please subscribe to my Substack. Just search Heather Ashera, that's Heather Ashera, or check the link in the show notes. And as always, see you on the flip side.